All right. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining me today. This webinar today is about limiting beliefs, and I think most of you have already worked with me in some capacity, or you know of me, or you know that I do teach on limiting beliefs. I actually have my book. I'm going to take a little bit out of that today, but what I wanted to talk about is the limiting beliefs and how they can actually be chains that totally hold us all back. So that being said, do you have chains that are holding you back? Right? So like I said, we're recording now, but I want you guys to all know that you can unmute yourself at any time. And that way we can go through this and just talk about it. I like to always teach in a format where it's kind of open forum. We can ask questions as we go and all of those things. But the first part of this I want to tell you guys about is I had my own chains and my own limiting beliefs that were holding me back. That's kind of what led me on this whole path. And I feel like no matter what your path is, if it's a spiritual path or a personal path or, self-development or physical health or whatever your path is, I really feel like the first thing that you have to deal with when you're starting something new is to figure out, is there beliefs that are getting in your way that are holding you back? So can anybody resonate with that? Like, are you like, yep, that's exactly why I'm here and why I signed up? I'm getting some yeses. Okay. Again, I think I heard somebody else just come in. Everybody's muted, but you're more than welcome to unmute anytime that you'd like. So if you have any questions or comments or, just again, open forum, let's all talk about this and get to the bottom of the limiting beliefs. So in my book, I talk a lot about, like what's going on and how not to get wrapped up in what you think might be a fairy tale and that the grass isn't greener. And I apologize. Hold on one second. I'm going to see about my dog. I apologize for that. I think the UPS man might have just, oh no, there's birds. I could not figure out what he was looking at. There's birds on my window. So at the front door. So that's what he is doing. I'm actually going to unmute everybody because I want to be able to, again, be in this open forum. And I feel like I'm all by myself when I'm like, wait a minute, I don't like this at all. So I'm like, no, this isn't how I work. I like to have everybody involved and everything going on. I am seeing some comments in the chat.
Trying to give you visual clues.
Yeah, I am. I'm seeing that. So anyway, so the first thing we have to do whenever we decide we want to change our life is we can't be on autopilot. And what happens sometimes when we're on autopilot, we don't even realize it. And what dictates that is the way that we're thinking and the thoughts that we have going on. So the first thing you have to do is really think about, what are you thinking about? So when you do that, you have to get in this place of being intentional. You have to be ready to make changes to what's going on in your life. So without even diving into it anymore, does anybody on the call already know, I have this limiting belief and this is what it is? Or do you even know what limiting beliefs are? Or do you need me to explain that a little bit more? Like, where is everybody at?
I have a lot of self-doubt.
Okay.
Like I always think, I secretly think I can't do things.
Okay.
That I sort of know I can do, but I'm afraid I'm going to fail at it.
Okay. Anybody else?
I've done quite a bit of work for myself and feel like I've really made some great progress and strides. However, you kind of wonder what is holding me back now.
Okay.
So, things come up from the deep, and so that's where I'm at.
Okay. All right. Anybody else? Okay, everybody's kind of quiet this morning. That's okay. It was a holiday weekend. So I'm going to mute everybody again. And what I'm going to talk about is I actually have a specific chapter in this book, and it's called What Are You Thinking? And the reason I put that chapter in there is because it's so basic that a lot of these things that we're running on, the programs that we're running on and the things that are going on is all programmed in. We don't even realize that we're thinking them. So there could be things like running in the background. And sometimes you'll hear it like a nasty little mean girl in your head. And sometimes you don't. Sometimes it's just, it's an underlying theme that's there that maybe you don't even realize is there. So what that looks like is thoughts like, can't do anything right. Nothing works out for me. Why do you think you're good enough? Right? Like, you're not good enough for that. Do you see how fat I look? Do you see how terrible I look today? Those kind of little things that are just nasty little things in the back of your head. Now, some of the ones that aren't quite so obvious are things that we've grown up with. Like, if you're really in the space right now where you're trying to grow financially, you may have a program running in the back of your head that says, money doesn't grow on trees, or you have to really work hard for your money, or, something along those lines. Does anybody resonate with that? And I just unmuted everybody again. I'm just going to leave everybody open and instead of trying to go back and forth. So does anybody resonate? And what are you guys working on right now? And then that way we can kind of dive in specifically to limiting beliefs that are going on for you guys right now.
Well, over the weekend, I worked on deciding whether I was unsure or scared. Like, if I was unsure about something, like whether it was going to work out, or if I was just scared to do it. So that was my thing that I was working on this weekend.
Okay. Anybody else?
What I'm dealing with is thinking that I somehow have, really done the whole positive thing and worked to diminish that mean girl part of me, that voice. I always counter it with the positive. But just when I'm starting to really feel like things are going my way, I get sideswept with situations that I'm like, what happened here?
Okay.
That just kind of derail and stall out. They always work out. It's just they create a lot of temptation to be in fear.
Okay.
And so I'm very curious. Where am I at now?
Okay. So part of this, Jordan, somebody's having a hard time hearing. Is everybody else hearing okay? It may be just her computer, or it could be my mic. Can everybody else hear me?
Your mic was cutting out a little bit earlier, but
it's okay now. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's some things, and I didn't send, normally I send out a paper, a worksheet for you guys to work through on this. And I didn't do that today because I just want to kind of get into the meat of it. But what I want you guys to think about is, if you were to pay attention to what you think on a daily basis, like, do you think you do have self-defeating thoughts? And if so, how often? Right? So anything that is a limiting belief is something that defeats or talks against something that you're wanting to create, right? So if you're wanting to create wealth, it's thoughts like, you have to work hard, money doesn't grow on trees, I can't afford that, those kind of thoughts. And a lot of times they're not even conscious. Like, we're so used to thinking them that we don't even realize that that's what's going on behind us. So when you're feeling any kind of fear, or like you're saying, Carrie, sometimes it is like learning that next step. And I hate the analogy of like the onion layers, but it's so true, especially when you're on this like spiritual journey to really figure out where you're going and what your life is all about. And you're really digging into things like that. It can really create this, oh, I'm doing so good, and I'm having these positive thoughts, and all of these things are amazing. And then something will just totally sideswipe you. And you're like, where did that come from? There's still some kind of vibration in your thought process, probably deep in your subconscious, that creates that fear, right? Anything that shows up as fear, there's usually some kind of a limiting belief behind it. Like,
That's
I'm not good enough for that, or I can't do that, or
It's like it comes from left field, very bizarre stuff. Mm-hmm. I just feel that energy is just, it's like, what?
Right. So
some of it is like habit that you don't even realize you're doing. Like,
it's
just
totally
stuff. Like, I'll say like, oh, that was stupid. Or I'm like, just stuff you say like that, but you don't realize it and you don't really mean it, but you said it out loud. So
right. And so our thoughts and our words create our reality, right? And a lot of time, that's how I constantly feel like starting over but not progressing. Okay, so this is all and somebody else says self-sabotaging. So all of these things, you guys, exactly is what the pattern is of limiting beliefs. So what I want you guys to think about and work on in the next few days, and again, you'll have a recording of this. I'll email it out after. It'll probably be a private link on YouTube. The things I want you to think about, and hopefully you all have a notebook, and if not, watch it back and do the notes then. Do you have any self-defeating thoughts, and how often? Like, I don't even want you to overanalyze it. When you ask that, I just want you to ask yourself, well, how am I responding? If you're thinking, yes, I do, but I have no idea what they are, that's okay. Like, once you start saying, oh my gosh, there's a limiting belief here I need to watch for, it will start revealing itself. Okay. So then the next thing is, are you even aware of the thoughts you have? Because a lot of times it's such habit, it's old programming, and we're just saying things because that's what we were always taught. You know what I mean? Like a lot of it for me was always money. Like, we couldn't afford it. We didn't have enough money. Money doesn't grow on trees. You got to work hard. All of these things. We just, you know what I mean? And in some level that boils down to deserving, right? I'm not worthy. So, and a lot of times, no matter what the limiting beliefs are, there's going to be something deep in there that's either I'm not worthy, or I'm not lovable, or I'm not good enough, right? And they're all kind of the same, but that's usually one of the three main things that it comes back down to. So then the next question is, once you start realizing that those beliefs are there, is the next thing is, do you know that you can change them? Like, do you really know in your heart of hearts that, you know what, this is something that I can change? And are you willing then to do that? So do you think changing your thought patterns would benefit you? And if so, why would it benefit? So if we were to ask that question to everybody right now, do you think changing your thought patterns would benefit you? And if so, why or how?
Well, personally, I have seen that happen in my life. But still, there's such an onion layer, like you said, of working through, because for me, when I've been able to change my thoughts, I was then able to be more aware and appreciative in gratitude, I guess, for the blessings to show up. I could see them more clearly. Also, I felt a real power in my just choosing to say, oh, okay, God, in this situation, I'm just gonna choose that your will be done, that you've got it, that it will work out, that I'm gonna choose a more positive outlook, or what have you, that I would choose that it's going to be all okay. And I could feel a power when I would do that. What I'm thinking for me is, you can start to see that, start to begin to trust it, and then you gotta also work, for me, on feeling that worthiness to the very core, and trusting, and so forth. So I think there's still, like you said, that background in the back, the feeling. So the words, the thoughts are definitely our first step. You gotta go there, and then stay aware and look for those answers, just feeling better.
Right. So here's the great thing. So whether you're already a little bit advanced, where you've actually been aware of your negative thoughts and you're starting to kind of see where the rhythm is and see where it comes up and those kind of things, like Carrie is, or if you're brand new where you're like, no, I'm just now starting this, the process is exactly the same. So it doesn't matter where you're starting with the limiting beliefs, the process is really the same. And it's just about, first of all, getting aware of your thoughts. And then second of all, getting to the root of those and then trying to reprogram them, right? So sometimes they'll sneak back in. Like, even if you think, you've already got it, I've been doing this and I'm really getting ahead and I'm not thinking negative anymore. Sometimes they're going to sneak back in, and that's okay. Like, it's just time to reprogram them at a different level. So some of the basic ones, I'll kind of walk you guys through, because here's some of the things. What'll happen is, in the beginning, like right now, if you've never even heard of limiting beliefs or self-sabotage or negative thinking or anything like that, you may not even be aware that you have it. So if you don't have that awareness already, then I would challenge you over the next few days to just really pay attention to how you think and how you talk to yourself, right? Because a lot of times this comes in as an internal dialogue. Well, or where you'll be like, oh, I want to do that. And then something in your head will say, well, you can't do that. You're not smart enough. Or, you know what I mean? Like something like that will pop in that totally defeats, right? So any limiting belief saying I can't do that is self-sabotage. It's a limiting belief. It's a negative thought pattern. So watch for those as you come up the next few days. Once you start to be aware of them, then you can actually say, like if you say, oh, if something comes in your head and you're like, I can't do anything right, you can then say, wait, that's not true. And you can counter that, just like what Carrie was saying. You can counter that and say, no, I did an amazing job. And so it counters that thought. So part of it is catching it. Second is countering it. And then as you go through, right, nothing works out for you. And you can say, no, that's not true. I'm blessed and I have amazing things, right? And make it simple. Like, here's the thing in the beginning, I think people try to get so overly, like, it has to be this big, amazing, grand aha moment. And you can really, if you're searching for something to be thankful for, like you can say, you know what, if you have this, I don't ever have anything and nothing's ever good enough or whatever, you can say, you know what, no, that's not true. I have this awesome pair of shoes, right? I just got this pair of shoes. It doesn't matter where it came from. If they're an amazing pair of shoes and you enjoy them and you love them, it doesn't matter where they came from. That's something nice that you own. So if there's that kind of thing going on, literally counter it with something simple. Don't get so big and so grand in the beginning. It'll be a struggle and it'll be so hard. But if you can tweak it a little at a time as you go through, then you'll really start building and learning how to reprogram that pattern of thought and that pattern of how you really feel about yourself, right? So the other one is, you look terrible today. Like there's days I'm like, oh my God, I look exhausted, or I look this or that. And I'll be like, wait, nope, I got to find something I like. You know what I mean? So when you can start focusing on what is good instead of what is bad, and it sounds so simple, but a lot of us are raised in this negative pattern where we tend to always see the negative first, or the negative outweighs something. A perfect example of this is, like, if you're in that space of waiting for the other shoe to drop. The other thing that I hear sometimes is, well, the only bad thing is, like, if you're doing something great or something fun is going on, well, the only bad thing is so-and-so couldn't make it. Well, why would you focus on that? Like, focus on how amazing it is that everybody got together and it was fun, right? But there's a natural tendency for some people, and I was one of them. I grew up with that negative tendency. So be aware of those kind of things. Is that resonating with anybody?
Yeah, absolutely. What I'm thinking when you're saying that is that culturally in the female community, from being little girls on up, there's a lot of self-bashing that goes along with
Oh,
that.
wow.
Oh, I admire your straight hair. And the straight-haired girls are going, I admire your curly hair.
Yeah.
And, you know, you've got blonde, I've got brown. Oh, dear. Everybody wants to switch and be somebody else.
Right.
And
The classic Mean Girls, like in that movie,
yeah,
it's ridiculous, but it's so true. I mean, I know they kind of try to make it a spoof, but I think there's more reality to that show than they think.
totally.
So, and we can do that not only just in downgrading ourselves, but also in our life, right? Like, downgrading our entire life is what happens when we think in that negative pattern. Just like, I mean, it could be something directly about ourselves, right? And that's about self-worth and self-care and really truly beginning to love ourselves. That's one aspect of it. But you can also sabotage your entire life, your success level, your financial prosperity. All of those things can be sabotaged by these limiting beliefs and these limiting thoughts that you may be carrying that you don't even know you have, right?
Yes. What I found and caught myself in too many times is You know, if it's mine, it probably isn't very good. If it's a job, then it's probably not a very good job for me to be in. Or, you know, the ones that I love, maybe they're not perfect somehow. I mean, it's just a real downward spiral of, well, if it belongs to me, it can't be all that good, because good things happen to other people,
That's
and
a
they're not
big one.
available to me because
Yes. Yeah, that's a big one. So Carrie, that specifically right there is that's not available to me. That is an all-time ultimate belief that happens to a lot of people. Now, where does that come from?
That's a lot of people.
Yeah, it's a lot of people.
It's a worthiness thing. Like,
right. So if we really want to dig into that, is everybody else, I'm assuming everybody else is kind of resonating in the same space, right? So what we really want to focus on is when things are going really good or whatever, and all of a sudden something just pops in, what is that thing that usually pops in? If somebody will give me an example, we'll just start kind of digging into it, and I'll show you guys how to work through and how to really start recognizing and breaking down the limiting beliefs that come up. All right, Carrie, I might have to pick on you because you're the only vocal one today.
I guess I'm like going, come on, girl, step back, let the others talk. Apparently I'm uncomfortable with silence, so I will just
That's okay.
I find what throws me is chaos.
Okay.
Somehow there's this whole squabbly, like say in my sales, all my sales are going really well, orders are going through, and then suddenly I'm getting this rash of big problems, lots of weird complaints about this or that. You know, maybe the trucking firm destroyed or damaged something, and then then there's the back and forth between my factory and my dealers and so forth about who's going to handle this and so forth. I guess I just find that they kind of come in little swirly storm-like things.
Okay.
Now that could be just life and living amongst a whole collection of world energies.
Well,
but it's really interesting.
And so here's the other part I'm going to throw in there is we create our life, right? And a lot of people, it was so funny because Monday, when I always do the Monday morning cards, and I usually do them ahead of time. And it's so funny how it falls because some people get really upset when I tell them that you create your own reality and you create your life. So if there's chaos, the only way to change it is to take responsibility for it. And I don't mean that in a bad way. Now, you may not have caused it. It may not be, anything to do with whose fault it is. But at some point, you have to say, okay, I keep seeing this pattern of chaos in my life. How do I be responsible for it? And how do I break that pattern? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's my question.
Yeah. So here's what you do is what we have to do then is dig into what's the belief behind that. Is there a belief that life is crazy and nothing ever goes smooth? Is there a belief that you can't control everything? Is there a belief that if things get out of control, it's not safe? Is there a belief that you're not successful if things don't go well? Do you know what I mean? Like, we've got to really start digging in and seeing, where is that?
Yeah, I like that, because part of what was going through my mind was the rain falls on the just and the unjust alike. Yeah, that's a biblical thing.
Right.
So how can I maintain my my peace and calm amidst a stormy sea and not take it personally?
Right. And that's what I was just going to ask you is, when those things happen, how do you personally feel and react? Like, what's going on in your mind when that happens? Like,
Well, part of me goes into the scared little girl that doesn't want to answer the phone or look at the email because somehow I'm responsible even though I'm not responsible.
Right.
So I want to always be in a CYA moment, defensive, where as long as I do all my best to not get into trouble,
Right.
and to always be ahead of the game and on top of things and create systems that will take care of these things, and then they all just kind of come in. Now that's probably, and this is interesting too, and I've seen this for years, that sometimes customers have their own chaos, and then they bring in their chaos with their orders, and then within their orders all of our systems just go haywire. They go wonky, as you call it.
Right.
And every system breaks down along the way, and it's almost like for even them, they're saying the world doesn't support them. Everybody messes up their orders, and guess what? We end up messing up and feeling really bad when maybe there's a whole nother energy going on here.
Right. And so here's the thing, Carrie, and this is where it gets kind of tricky, where you have to really be responsible for your own stuff. Anytime you're saying they do this or they do that, you are giving your power away. Right? And that's exactly with limiting beliefs, what we want to do. The power goes away from us and somebody else is in control. So, but from what you're telling me, what I'm hearing is if you don't do things perfectly, you don't have value.
Yeah, probably. I mean, there's a part of me that feels that tightening
right.
in the core solar plexus, the fear that I'm going to be blamed and shamed and guilty as charged, that I should have picked up on it, I should have seen it before it could ever be a problem, blah blah blah.
Okay, so those are all perfect examples of limiting beliefs, right? So when those things come up, you've got to say, wait a minute, stop. So here's one of the best things that I can teach when it seems to go into chaos and that whirlwind starts to happen, right? As soon as you get one of those thoughts, so everything's going great in your day and everything's fine, and all of a sudden you get that one client and it's just, you can see the spiral and the rabbit hole and you're starting down, right? You literally stop. I mean, if you have to slap your hands, if you have to stomp your feet, whatever it is, where you just like stop that pattern and be like, wait a minute, I'm not choosing that next thought. Because what happens once you have one thought, then the next thought comes, then the next thought comes, then the next thought comes, right? So you're like, oh great, here's that client. Now she's going to be a bitch, and then this is going to go bad, and then the order's not going to go right, and then they're going to be upset, and then they're going to call the manager, and then you just keep going and going and going. Do you see how that happens?
Like give yourself like a mental bitch slap.
Yes.
Like,
yes. Like literally you have to stop yourself when you're in that space, right? Because what'll happen is you will just go down the rabbit hole. So what you've got to figure out is, in that space, this is pretty deep, because this isn't like in the beginning of the limiting beliefs, but for you specifically in this situation, what I would say is, okay, you need to get to the bottom of what is the belief about yourself and your value when these things go wrong, right? Because that's the best way. No matter what happens, you're still valuable and you still are worthy of a great life, even if things go crazy, right?
Yep. No, thank you. That's step one, and that's kind of back where you were talking before, and I said yes, the words are, and it was like I had to actually do that. No, stop now. That is not how I'm going to move forward and believe. And so it is just I think it's more now at a, I've got some feeling level,
right,
to work through.
My trick is when I do that, I also am mad at myself that I have to remember not to be mad at myself.
Yes.
I did that. So then I'm like I can't just let that go. And also like beat myself up for having those thoughts. I'm like, oh, why did I let myself? Then I have to like hit
and
myself.
You're on another.
Oh, I shouldn't have done that too. Like so, but I automatically go to like, why do I let myself do that to myself? But I'm like, I double do it.
But you know what, Melissa, that's totally true. And I think a lot of us are guilty of that. I know I've done the same thing. In the past, I'd be like, dang it, I just learned that. And then I just turned around and did it all over again. Just look at it as, okay, well, now I know. And sometimes you have to practice, right? Sometimes practice for when that happens. Like, okay, if this happens again, what am I going to do different? And then kind of almost like role play and put yourself in that situation that, oh no, all heck just broke loose. And now how am I going to respond? Right? So it's a process, and it's first of all, being aware of it. So the awareness, and you've got that, you're like, oh, I see that I do that. And then I respond with this.
I'm going to give myself like the positive for, I at least noticed it. So I'm going to start
right. Yeah.
There you go. That's right.
I noticed that I'm like beating myself up twice. Why the heck am I doing that? Like, hey, you know what? But I noticed it. So I'm not going to have to, yes, I did it. I noticed it. So it's a starting point, you know.
And so here's the thing. Next time, be like, okay, next time I'm going to notice it a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
Right.
And then the next time I'm going to notice it a little bit earlier. And then the next time you're going to notice it before you even react, because you're going to be like, oh, I tend to do this. Yeah.
Before I do it, go.
Before I do it, go, oh, wait, nope, we're breaking that pattern. Do you know what I mean? So it's really, you guys, it really, I love that. That makes me so happy, because that is exactly the best way to do it, is start baby steps, right? And then be preparing yourself, say, okay, I'm seeing this pattern now. Some of you may not even know what your patterns are. So today is going to be the first step in just looking and saying, okay, over the next few days, I'm going to see, where am I throwing in, oh, you can't do that, or you're not good enough for that, into my vocabulary, so that I'm sabotaging myself, right? So you're just going to be aware of it. Those of you that are already aware of it, you're going to really dial in and say, wait, what is this key phrase that I'm seeing that's showing up? Right? And then you're going to say, okay, when that happens, how do I react to it? And once you get to that space where you're like, okay, now how do I react to it? You're going to be like, okay, what would be a better way to react? And what are the triggers? And you start kind of really following and looking and being aware of it even more. And then that's slowly how you break the pattern. And of course, then part of that is, if that thought comes up, you replace it with a better thought, right? So it's like an affirmation thing. You use the affirmations. And just start being aware of how that is. So Jen says, I don't have time for that, right? So that is a classic one that happens a lot. We say we don't have time because if we do, then we can't really be successful, right? So it's another self-sabotage. It's almost on the verge of a psychological reversal on that one, because it's your subconscious really is meant to keep you safe. Okay. So here's the thing. A lot of people are like, well, I don't understand, why would your brain think that way? Well, because your subconscious is where all of our learned patterns are, right? So this is where, when you're little, you learn how to ride a bike, and you have to say, okay, this hand goes here, this hand goes here, and then I have to pedal and I have to balance. And this is how I learned to ride a bike. Once you learn it, it's not in your conscious thinking anymore. It drops into your subconscious. You already know how to do it. It's a program there that you can pull out anytime. It doesn't matter if you haven't rode a bike in 10 years. Anybody who knew how to ride a bike can get on a bike, and it won't take very long to get back on and get going.
You don't have time to do that process, or you don't have time?
No, like, she's saying like one of her beliefs is, I don't have time for that.
Oh, okay.
And so that's what I'm saying. It's somewhere along the way, she's learned that, just like riding a bike.
I never even thought of that as a limiting belief. That is totally, I say that all the time.
Mm-hmm. It is.
Like, that is a good one.
Because in all reality, we have plenty of time. Like, time is not real, right?
Right.
So if we get way deep into the spirituality part of it, time doesn't really exist. So we only make it time because we're here in this physical, right? So it's a limiting belief, because you're saying, I don't have time. Anything that's I don't, or that limits, right? Because that's limiting how much time you have, right? So, and a lot of times for people that are successful, and I just know enough of the backstory to know there's something going on with Jen, that she's like, she needs to have time to do certain things. And this kind of goes back to that planning stage in the back, where are you really spending your time, and what would be a better, instead of I don't have time for that, is it I choose to spend my time somewhere else? And if you're choosing to spend your time somewhere else, where is that, right? Okay. And then somebody else also said, knowing my luck, or it's never easy. Those two are so, knowing my luck, something's going to go wrong, right? That's like, and you don't even have to say something's going wrong. It's that knowing my luck, things won't work out. Knowing my luck, something's going to go. That is something I hear all the time. And I don't even think people realize it, but they don't even have to say the full words because there's negative to it without even saying the verbiage. And so if you catch yourself saying knowing my luck, that's an automatic, usually, whatever. Now, if it's like my husband, he wins stuff all the time, like knowing his luck, he'll win it, but hardly ever is it used that way. But he just won Katy Perry tickets. We're going to go to Katy Perry in like December or November, whenever it is, because he won tickets. Like, he's constantly winning stuff like that. But I mean, and for him, like, knowing my luck is actually a good thing, but for most people it's not. So, and then the next one is, it's never that easy, right? Never that easy. Like, it can't be that easy. You got to work hard. That comes back to how we were raised most generally. If it's that easy, you shouldn't be able to make money at it, because we've got this thing that it has to be hard and you have to work hard, and it's just a limiting belief, right? So that one, you've just got to be like, you know what if it is easy? So, and sometimes you've got to just switch it enough to be like, well, what if it was that easy? What if it was that easy to do exactly what I wanted to do and make money at it? What if I could do that? What if I could be successful simply talking to people, right? What if all of these things? What if I could sit down and write an entire book in half an hour? You know what I mean? Not that, I mean, you'd probably need more time than that, but just the idea of taking that limiting belief and turning it into a what if situation gives some freedom to it to be able to start slowly changing it. And then feeling like you're not enough, no matter what you do, no matter how much you've done, you feel like you should have done more. Okay. So that is a huge one. I'm not good enough. Plain and simple. That's what it comes down to, right? So the best way to look at that is, how do you figure out where that started of the I'm not good enough, right? And then start rebuilding that. So if your main theme and it's I'm not good enough, then you've got to start really treating yourself and telling yourself you are good enough. So if you're not good enough, people around you are not going to treat you like you're good enough. So as soon as you decide for yourself, I am good enough, and you start treating yourself that you're good enough, it has to start with you. You have to say, you know what, that's not true. I am good enough. Yeah. Be your own best friend. We've talked about this one before.
That's my Mother's Day theory.
Yeah. You've got to start treating yourself that way first and start changing that inner belief, because at that point, it's a core inner belief that's going on, and that's going to be a theme no matter what you're doing. So that's where you've got to dig into your own self-worth and your own really starting to work on yourself and beginning to start loving yourself so that you feel worthy of loving yourself. Once you get there, then it'll all start coming out on the outside. I was doing, let's see, somebody says monotony. Monotony is my life. Over time, I try to break the cycle and feel like something else is getting thrown in the mix. Can you expand on that a little bit? And then I'm going to go, I was doing so good with the belief, and I allow things around me to change that. Do you mean with your own value, your own worth? Okay. So again, that's again, it's another test, right? So you're going right along and you're like, okay, I'm really getting this and I do believe in myself. And then bam, something happens. So the best thing to do in that situation is, okay, well, let's dig into it a little bit farther. Evidently, this is like, maybe you were in self-worth 101 and now you're in self-worth 102, right? So now you're at the next class and you're working towards your master's degree. So you pass this test back here. Now there's a new test. What's this new test? And how do I really dig in a little bit more? Why did it trigger it? What brought that thought back up? What are the circumstances? What do you believe about the circumstances? Right? And then how does it come back to you? A lot of times what happens in the I'm not good enough, we're overly responsible and we think everything is our responsibility. Right? So, and part of that is, so like for me, it was like once I figured out I could change my life just by changing the way I think and the limiting beliefs I have, I was like, thank God, because now it's in my own control. Right? But on the other hand, it's like, you're so responsible for everything that sometimes we actually bring in things that we're not really supposed to be responsible for. So that goes back to like Carrie and her customers, right? Like, okay, so they're having a bad day. that's really not her responsibility. So she's got to figure out what that boundary is and how does she maintain her own energy, her own vibration, and her own worth while dealing with somebody who doesn't feel worthy, right? Because whether they know it or not, that's kind of what's going on the other end of the phone.
Jen, I've got another thought that has helped me through the years. Is at one point, being my own best friend was not really viable.
Mm-hmm.
So what I was able to do is, remember, I had a great aunt who just loved me unconditionally. So I was really fortunate to have at least an elderly, like grandma or great aunt, who just thought I was perfect, just the way I was. But I kind of remember. Do you remember the TV show Mayberry RFD? And I always think of Aunt B. And I think of her. And if you were sitting there with Aunt B and telling her your woes and troubles and all of that, wouldn't she just pretty much set you straight that you're just fine?
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong. And honey, you're good, great. We love you. I see you. And there's nothing wrong with you.
Right.
And I had to kind of use that visualization of a great encourager who would just appreciate me and love me no matter what.
Right. And I mean, that's perfect. Sometimes you can do that. I mean, the best thing to do is to do that for yourself. Like if you were talking to your best friend, what would you tell them? Right.
Exactly.
So, and it's all a process, right? So,
Right.
and it's all learning how to, how to work through these things that are kind of holding us back. So I was asking for a little bit to expand on being in the monotony and trying to break the cycle. Chances are there's something in there that says, if I stay small, I'll be safe, or if nobody sees me, I'll be safe. A lot of times if you kind of get stuck in that, like it's almost like where you may have been taught, like just stay in the corner and nobody will see you, nobody will bother you, or if you don't put yourself out there, you can't get rejected. I'm not sure if that's exactly where that thought is going, or if that makes any sense. But sometimes there is safety in not putting yourself out there, right? So, and again, that's a limiting belief because there's some fear that says it's not safe. Well, where does that fear come from? Right? So, I mean, it's all part of learning that, you are safe, or maybe there's a fear of, if I say this, people won't like me, or if I do this, people won't like me, and again, that all comes back down to self-worth, right? And how you feel about yourself. So all of these little things, and they can be so big, but they can be so small all at the same time, right? It can be as simple as just having a casual conversation and saying like, oh, I could never do that. Or, oh, I'm not smart enough for that. Or, oh, I'm so stupid. You know what I mean? Like those kind of things. So a lot of this is just starting to really be aware of what's going on in your life. What are the thoughts? Like literally, what thoughts do you have? And then dig in a little bit deeper and find out what are the things that you've taught yourself over the years, right? And maybe it's somebody in your family used to always say this, like the money doesn't grow on trees and we can't afford that. And whether you know it or not, you bring that into your own life, whether it's true or not. Right. So like I kind of had that pattern of never having enough and not having enough money. And it didn't matter how much we made, we never had enough. Well, once I realized it was a thought pattern, holy cow, it took a while to learn to break it. But once you break it, you look at things totally differently. Here's the other thing. Then you're not afraid to do things that are completely out of the box either. Right.
Yeah. Moving beyond the self-protection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, stepping out as Jennifer Lonnberg Christian Psychic was huge. I was like, I had limiting beliefs of, oh my God, people are going to think I'm evil, or people are going to think this, or people are going to think that. And at some point you have to just be able to say, you know what am I really afraid of? They may think that, but is that really going to cause me any harm? Not really. I mean, there's a fear that it could, and you can make all kinds of excuses as to why it would, right? And we can do the excuses here. I have some other things about just learning to be intentional about how you're going to do this. This is any reasons, and this is, I'm going to read from my book, any reasons, quote unquote, which is excuses. So any excuses that you have to be identified so that you can take your power back. You cannot play the victim if you really want to create change. It doesn't matter what your circumstances are or what has happened. If you don't decide that you want to fully accept and be responsible for how you live your life, nothing will create lasting change. So here's the thing. And these are my own, like, I used to have so many limiting beliefs that I used as excuses. And all they did was keep me small and keep me stuck. So, and I didn't realize for the longest time that the reasons that I was using were actually excuses in disguise. So my family has always done it that way. Believe it or not, that can be a limiting belief because it's not letting you get outside of how to do this. So, you know, my thought is, well, obviously it's not working. So it's time to come up with something new. The other one that I hear a lot is, I don't know how to make changes. Well, I'm going to call you on that one too, because anybody can learn to do something different. If you don't want to make changes, that's one thing. And you can just say, I don't want to make changes, then that's fine. But don't say I can't, because that's not true. Money doesn't grow on trees. I have to have money to be able to do the certification or to do whatever it is I need to do to get that next boost for my income. Yes, you're correct. Money, in fact, does not grow on trees. But if you get creative about money, it can totally change it. So take your clothes to consignment store, sell something online. You know, the whole one man's trash is another man's treasure thing, like get a part-time job, or, you know, find a creative, do a bake sale, something creative to make money come in. Another one is, it's difficult. That is probably one of the most simple, most powerful limiting beliefs you'll ever have, is it's difficult. It's hard. Well, who says it's hard? What if you change your mind and say, you know what, this is going to be easy. It's going to be easy. Like, it literally, it doesn't matter what you're going to do. Oh, I want to chop this tomato. Oh, it's going to be hard. Well, you can still chop the tomato, right? So maybe the knife isn't exactly as precisely sharp as you want it to be. You're still going to cut the tomato. It may not be in perfect little things, but it can still be done, right? So it's getting over that, you know, you can do this. If you've ever learned anything, how to ride a bike, you know, how to have a new job, how to run the computer, any of those basic things that you've learned, if you can do that, you can literally do anything, because it's just mindset and learning to believe it. No one will help me. That's another one I love. And that was one of my biggest things, is I have to do it all by myself. There's two ways to look at this one. Is, yay, you get to do this yourself and you get to do it your way. Or sometimes if we feel like nobody will help, maybe it's because we aren't really asking, like we're not putting ourselves out there. Right? So that limiting belief right there is a perfect example of how it can be. There could be two ways to look at it. Like, there's different ways to look at things, right? So that's when you have to really kind of dig in, like I was saying, and say, okay, get to the bottom of what is that belief and what does it really mean? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And you guys, the biggest thing here again is just, what is the awareness of it? And then how do you do something different? Like, it's already 12:20. Gosh, time really goes fast on these things. I can't believe how fast it goes. But in the Facebook group, if you guys think of really what I want you to do, let me back up just a minute. What I really want you to do over the next few days, some of you are in the membership, so we can definitely talk about it there. And then if not, in the Embodied Grace community, which is the free Facebook group, really dig into and talk, like, in your own life in the next 2 to 3 days. I just want you to look at what's going on and what patterns you have and what's coming up. And just be aware and actually be like in the space of, okay, I am open to seeing, where am I holding myself? Where am I implementing limiting beliefs that I maybe didn't realize I was implementing them? And what do they say? Right? And then once you do that, share in the group and I'll help you walk through them. Because sometimes you're like, okay, I know this is limiting belief, but I don't know what it means or why it's here or what to do about it or how to even make it opposite of what it is. Like, because a lot of times we can then replace it with an affirmation. But if you're like, I don't even know how to explain this one, I don't know what an affirmation would be, let me know and I'll help you kind of tweak that so that you can start learning how to do those things. Then the next part of that is, once you're aware of it, start rebuilding it. Say, okay, now I recognize this as a limiting belief. You may not get to the real core of it in the beginning. It may just be something simple, like, this is hard. Okay, well, why do I think it's hard? What is getting in my way? And really start breaking it down instead of just saying, I can't do this, it's too hard, right? So just simply start where you're at and then dig into it a little bit more and a little bit more, and then practice. And every time you practice, you're going to get a little bit better. Don't expect changes to happen overnight, because they won't, right? I've been doing this for years, and every once in a while, out of left field, I'll get something that just wham. And it's usually if I'm, too tired, or if I, haven't been doing meditation like I should, or if I'm not taking care of myself. That's prime time for the limiting crap to come up, because then we don't have any willpower left. Do you know what I mean? So kind of be aware of yourself and how you're feeling and where you're at and what's going on and all of those things. And that is where the true changes are going to come in your life, and where you can totally do a complete 180. And you guys, everything I teach is because I've been through it. So believe me when I tell you, everything, the whole I don't have time, I'm stuck in my routine, all of these kind of things, and all the limiting beliefs I read out of the book are all my own. So I totally get it, and I totally know where you're at. So does anybody want to give me one right now before we get ready to finish up? Looking to see.
I have another thought that's not an issue, but another thought that I think has helped me is, when I have that limiting belief, is to go, okay, not only is that not true, but then I talk to myself and bring up things from the past that defy that, that show that is not accurate, that actually, like, say I don't have time, I can say, well, actually, I do remember a time or two where I just dug in and it happened. Or I don't have the money. Well, how many times have I actually seen that I just do it, and then suddenly the bill gets paid, and I'm like, not even sure how or why, but I've got the money to cover it, and it just happened. So those things.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right, Carrie. And that, I think that's a little bit, and I don't know, everybody in the group is probably in that space, but if you're just learning or just starting out with the limiting beliefs, you're not going to be able to reason with yourself yet. It's literally going to be just, okay, I'm just going to stop, and I'm going to think something else, and I'm going to choose. Anytime that I say I'm not good enough, I'm going to choose to say, nope, that's not true, because I totally rocked that the other day. You know what I mean? Like, pick some scenario that you know that you did a really good job at, and do that. So just a real quick.
Feels silly. I think you have to get over the
totally. You have to, yeah.
You're like, I'm a dork. Like, that feels dorky doing that, and so you have to get over that part of it. And like, that's a totally limiting belief too. Like, I feel like stupid. I feel like a dork doing this. But I think that's where you need to start, because you just kind of feel, because that's what's holding you back for a lot of it. I think is you just feel kind of silly doing it at the beginning. So
yeah. It does feel weird in the beginning.
I'm like totally talk to myself. Yeah, it's like there's nobody watching me what I'm doing, so I just need to get over that.
Right. And that's so true. I mean, and then that comes back to expectations and beliefs about how you're supposed to behave. Right?
It's not going to be, like, I guess,
silly.
Or even just like, I'm so great, or I'm so awesome, or like, that's not.
Well, yeah, get off your high horse. Right?
That
was one of the ones I heard all the time. Get off your high horse. I actually just went to a conference the other night, and it was so funny because he was talking about how that's a bullshit thing. Like, you're not better than anybody else. He goes, what if you are better than somebody else? And it's not to judge the other person. It's just, what if you are better at that than they are? Like, why is it a bad thing? And it's so true. Like, you don't want to be overly boastful and prideful and in somebody else's face, but it has nothing to do with them. It has everything to do with you. So if you believe you're good at it, allow yourself to believe you're good at it. And if you don't, then let's change that, because you are amazing and you are wonderful and you have all this power inside of you to create a life of just amazing things, a life you actually love to live every single day. So allow yourself that, right? And what if you are better? Doesn't mean you have to be better than anybody else, but what if you're better than you are right now? Like, what if you're better than who you're allowing yourself to be?
I think it's just that those norms that people put on you that, you shouldn't act like that. And not that you're walking around going, I'm better than you, but like, it's just that thought that you're not supposed to even, that's not ladylike.
We've been beaten down for years to not be better than anybody else. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's not even that you it's not even that you're thinking that you're better. You just think I'm good at something, not that you're even walking around consciously going, I'm better than you at that. It's just like, I'm good at that. It doesn't necessarily have to mean that somebody else is worse at it.
And we've been taught through school not to be like, it's almost like it's a shame to be good at something, right? Because you don't want to hurt somebody else's feelings. Everybody else should win. All of these kind of things. Like, it's kind of, the society has kind of gone that way a little bit. So I totally see what you're talking about. Whereas we should be celebrating all of our strengths, right? Because you're going to be good at something that I'm not good at. You know what I mean? Somebody else is going to be great at something that I don't really get it, and I'm going to be good at something that maybe somebody else isn't going to get. But instead of being like, I shouldn't be proud of myself for that, I think we should be. I think we should be able to say, you know what, I'm really good at this. It doesn't mean you have to throw it in anybody's face, but at least for your own self, allow yourself to believe that. Does that make sense? Yeah. And I think that's where a lot of the self-worth thing comes into, right? And where all these limiting beliefs come in, because we're not supposed to act a certain way. We're not supposed to talk a certain way. We're not supposed to do this. Well, who says? And as long as you're not hurting somebody else in the process, why not allow yourself to be happy and to be able to create that life that you want?
Well, even if you look at somebody who you admire, or I'll use my example. I wanted to have success, so that really started me in on my spiritual journey to get over myself. I found a lot of times I was in my own way.
Right.
Well, in essence, when you look at, like, say, a CEO of a major corporation, who developed, and you're like going, you know what? What's the difference? They're a person. And you start looking and studying that they just thought a little bit differently than anybody else. And that opened them up.
They had the courage to act on it.
Right. And so why can't I do that too?
You can.
Of course. But I got to feel it. I got to believe it.
Right.
I got to do it. And I got to start down that road.
No, that's absolutely right. All right, ladies, everybody was kind of quiet today, but I hope it was still a good webinar. It's already 12:30. Like I said, time goes so fast on these. So again, in the groups, go ahead and be active in there. Let me know if you have any questions. Hopefully we got into a little bit that's going to help you moving forward. If you don't have my book yet, get the book, because it's actually really helpful and it's pretty basic. I like to just make everything as simple as possible and really dig in and just be open to what if, right? So what if life was amazing? All right, we'll see you guys later. Have a great day.
Can you stay on?